What's up guys? There was a little bit of a mix up with the SD card, so we're jumping in a little bit through the build already, but today we're going to be working on my Epic Evo, and we're going to be turning it from this into this. Make sure you stick around for the whole video because we go through the entire process on how we did this paint job. While I start the teardown, let's go over a little bit about this bike. I absolutely love my Epic Evo. It is so capable. It's almost as fast as my Enduro down some trails. It's super poppy. It's really springy. I really like this bike. I bought this bike. It's the base model, the lowest tier Epic Evo, because I knew I had a ton of parts laying around in my spare parts bin. I had a pike, I had X01 shifter, I had a bike yoke dropper, I had a ton of parts laying around. So I bought the lowest tier with the idea that I was just gonna swap a ton of stuff out. I didn't really love the color when I got it. It's this super dark blue, but I still wanted to get this bike and try it out because everyone had been saying that they loved the Epic Evo. I really like it, but it needs some extra pizzazz. So today we're gonna be stripping everything off the bike and we're gonna start painting it. When sanding down the bike, it's super important that you prep. You wanna make sure that you get all surfaces clean. You wanna make sure that you mask off everything possible because any mistakes that you make in the prep work is going to look very bad once you finish painting it. When doing an amateur paint job like this in your garage with rattle can and with zero experience as I have, it's super helpful to pick a design that can get a little bit messed up and it kind of just looks like it was the plan. And that's kind of how this paint job looks as well. A little bit here and there, a little mix up here and there isn't really going to affect the outcome. It's still going to look like that was part of the plan. So that's super helpful. As far as sanding goes, I'm sanding everything with 180 grit sandpaper, and some things I went over and I hit it with 220, but for the most part, everything was with 180. In hindsight, maybe should have hit everything with 220. There's a few little sandpaper marks here and there that didn't get covered with the paint, but overall, it still ended up looking amazing. The clear coat filled in most of those holes, but yeah, this bike came out so good and I'm super happy with it. Well, as usual, I got a little bit locked in. It's now 12:06 at night. But here we are, we're all prepped, ready for paint. I've got everything masked off. Masking is like the most important thing you can do here. If you mask it bad, you're gonna get a bad paint job. So definitely spend the time masking. It took me just about as long to mask this as it did to sand it. But you know, make sure to get every little frame and pivot hole all taped off. Down here we have just a sacrificial seat post in here, and I've got a nice sharp tape line and then tape covering the seat post clamp so that we don't paint the seat post clamp, but that's all good to go. And so is the rear triangle. I'm gonna get some primer on this. Maybe if I can stay up late enough, I'll get the first coat of paint, let it dry overnight, and then we can add the detail tomorrow morning. Here's how we're looking after the first coat of primer. Super nice. Everything laid down super clean. Super stoked with how it came out. Important lessons learned. Double check you have enough primer before you start painting. So I ran out. This is going to have to get continued tomorrow once I can run to the store because once again, it is pretty late at night. So that's gonna dry, and then tomorrow morning we'll pick up where we left off. And hopefully we are able to clear coat this tomorrow and then maybe put this thing together the next day. So we'll see, but from now on we'll pick up in the morning. All right, it's the start of day 2 here. We ran to Home Depot this morning and we picked up some more paint. They did not have the same primer that I just used, but I did get some paint and primer. So we're just gonna use that. Everything's gonna work out fine because we're gonna still be clear coating everything. I went with a satin finish on all the paint. I have a feeling if you've seen the paint job in the intro again, this has a bit of a cartoony look, so I'm hoping the satin finish will have that same kind of sheen that like cartoon pages have. I think this is gonna turn out really great. We're gonna have to sand down the frame just a little bit more, just because there's a bit of a rough finish from the primer beforehand, because it was a sandable primer. This new one is paint and primer, so it will lay on smooth. So just need to do that, and then we'll be all set to get this thing painted white. All right, we have the first coat of white down now. So the key here is not to cake it up too much. You can still see a little bit of blue poking through from the previous paint job. You don't want to go too thick on your first coat. You're going to have multiple coats to get full coverage of the frame. And to avoid runs, you want to make sure you do this pretty thin to start with, because if you go too thick, you'll start caking up the paint where you don't want to. You know, if you do three, maybe four super light coats, you will end up with full coverage anyway, and you avoid having any runs or any areas where the paint looks bad. All right, we've got the rear triangle strung up here now for paint. I unfortunately don't have the best setup here for painting, so I'm gonna have to get low on the ground, but it is what it is. Let's get the rear triangle sprayed. All right, we got the frame drying outside. Now, all we gotta do is take the fork apart, disassemble that, get that prepped and ready for paint. I wasn't gonna do it because it was a lot of work, but I just don't think the bike's gonna look right unless the fork matches. I also had a great idea. I think it's the paint fumes working on me, but we're gonna pop this the air can off on the shock, and we're gonna do the same paint job on the air can. This is gonna look really sweet to have the suspension match the rest of the bike. Well, it looks like the mics were off while I filmed this one, so I'll translate my babble here. So it looks like we have the fork all torn apart, ready for sanding. Now I'm yapping about the stanchions and how I don't want to scratch those, so I already went ahead and taped them off before I started sanding, just to make sure I didn't scratch anything. Now it looks like I'm blabbering about the fork seals. I'm gonna leave those in while I sand and while I paint. That will help to mask off the inside of the fork in that seal area, so that I don't have to mask it beforehand and worry about getting paint inside the fork. When I pull these seals out, it'll make sure I have a perfectly clean surface where the seal sits. So I'm just gonna sit down and sand these up, and we'll catch back in when we are ready for paint. All right, almost done here getting everything prepped for paint. Like I was saying earlier, it's super important that you pay attention and mask everything off properly. This is going to make or break your paint job. If you have bad masking, you're gonna have terrible marks all over the paint. So it's super important to sit down and really make sure that you get this done right. So I'm just gonna lock in. We'll get this thing finished up, and I'll catch back up with you guys when I am done masking this off. She's cheer captain and I'm on the bleachers dreaming about the day. All right, we've got the CSU masked off as well as the lowers here. So I'm just gonna get to painting, and we'll check back in when everything's white. After this, we have to pull the air can off of the rear shock, and then from there, we'll be ready to start adding all the details. All right, now it's time for the most stressful part. The part that I've been dreading this whole time is adding all of the detail. So I've got these black acrylic markers, and they draw really thick, wet black paint lines. And so I've got these two pieces here that I just tested on, and I am blown away. This whole bike is going to look insane when I finish all of this. So this is the LSC dial for the pike, and I even put like a plus and a rotation direction. And then this is one of our Fox top caps, which doesn't fit perfectly, but it's good enough for me for my pike. So I painted this white and did the same paint job. I'm blown away. So now it's time to really focus. I'm really scared to do the frame. I think the fork's gonna be a little bit easier. I'm just worried about the frame because some of the detail lines are not as defined, and I'm just worried about making it look right without overdoing the black. But we'll set up the camera and just get to work. I didn't really pick up the camera a whole lot between the air can and the fork, but here I am doing the frame. Slowly over time, I started to get the hang of how to make this look natural. I started with the easier to do parts, like the air can is easy to repaint. The air caps are easy to repaint. Even the fork, for the most part, is easy to repaint. The frame is the only part that's super difficult, so I wanted to make sure that I got a good amount of practice in before I went ahead and painted the frame. Basically what I did is I took the big marker, the one with the square edge, and I just followed all of the hard edges, or at least what looked like hard edges. The Epic doesn't really have a whole lot of square edges to it. It's got more rounded edges, so it was a little hard to kind of tell where the lines should be. But I just went ahead and followed all those lines as best I could, kind of circled any of the pivot points, any hard features. And then afterward, I went back in with the smaller pen and I added a ton of accent lines to make this look scribbled. The whole idea is to make this look like it was drawn in a comic book. Got a little bit of a spy versus spy type of vibe, if you remember that old comic. Slowly over time, I started to get the hang of this. Kept adding details. I did have to stop myself because I wanted to just keep adding more and more and more black lines, and eventually, you know, it gets a little bit too busy. So I did have to stop myself a little early and make sure I didn't go too crazy, because you can overdo it for sure. My dad was my biggest critic here. He came out many times to supervise, but I think the bike came out great. I'm super, super happy with it, and I can't wait to get out on the trails and shred it. All right, we're in the home stretch. Check out how sweet this thing is looking. I cannot tell you how nervous I was to write that S on the frame. I practiced a ton of times over here, but the curved surface made it really hard. I'm stoked with how it came out. That looks so good. It's centered on the frame. I was sweating bullets for making that S, but this thing looks amazing. I'm super, super stoked. We've got the rest of everything drying out here. So we've got, I need to finish up this rear triangle just a little bit. It was getting hard, so I brought it out so that the black could dry and I could try again. We've got the can here. I'm arguably the most excited about the shot can there. I think that might be the best looking piece on here. We got the fork. Not overly stoked with how the lowers came out. They're not my favorite, but they still look pretty good. It's still gonna look amazing. The lowers here look amazing, or sorry, not the lowers, the upper. The CSU came out friggin' awesome. And then lastly, the air cap looks sick. And the LSC dial came out really, really rad too. I've been going since about 8 o'clock this morning, so this is taking a little longer than I thought it would, but it's turning out so good. So really, really excited. Again, this frame, I'm gonna have a blast riding this thing now. Just finished hitting everything with some clear coat. We did a satin clear coat on the whole build. Again, just to make it look like it's a comic book page. Check that out. I'm still so stoked on that S. Everything here is all done, all cleared, ready to go. We're gonna head to the shop tomorrow and get everything all put together. We have to go make a pit stop at the bike shop, Rockin' Road, to put the fork together because I don't have seals for that. But then we will head over and we'll commence the build on this thing. All right, we just got to the shop here. I've got all the parts laid out. We've got the frame over there, the shock built up over there. I did stop at Rockin' Road and I put everything together. That way we don't have to worry about rebuilding the fork here. We're missing a few of the key tools that would have made this an easier job. So just got everything set up and ready to go. And now we're gonna start putting it all together here at the Better Bolts and Freedom Co. shop. Getting the bike built up here, Everything went pretty smoothly. I actually was pretty surprised with how quickly they put the bike back together. Everything was already set up. The cable lengths were already set. The brake levers were already set where I wanted to because this bike was already set up beforehand. So went pretty smoothly there. Not a whole lot of hiccups. I was actually really shocked. The only thing I was worried about was running the rear, all of the cables to the back of the bike. Oop, bit of a nugget break there. Running the cables to the back of the bike, I was a little bit worried because I had to pull the Specialized factory routing out of the frame when I painted it, since I took the rear triangle off, and I was a little bit worried getting all the lines fished through was going to be a pain, but really the only one that was a pain was the rear brake line, which is why I'm routing that blue cable guide through right now. You can't cut the banjo off at the caliper unless you put a whole new line on. So I wasn't able to run the line down from the front, which would have been really easy. I had to run it up from the back, which is why I had to run that cable guide through. But other than that, everything went really, really smoothly. And yeah, this build came together so well. All right, this bike is really starting to take shape. I've got almost everything on. Everything's kind of run tentatively, got to hook everything up. But oh my goodness, this looks so good. I didn't want to overdo it. There were certain things I wanted to take off and paint as well, but I just wanted to get the bike put together as is and just see what it looks like. So I got to do something with the wheels. I think they're not going to be exactly the way I want them to look on here, but even then, I'm super stoked with how everything's turning out. Look at those adjuster knobs and the air cap. This is so rad. There it is, it's done. I'm so stoked with how this came out. I cannot wait to get out on the trails. I do think I'm gonna hit up Ride Wrap and see if they will send me a full Ride Wrap kit for this bike, just to protect the paint. I really like how it came out, and I'd like for it to stay looking that way. That'll just stop any unwanted scrapes and scratches from rocks flying up on the trail or anything like that. Yeah, really, really excited with how this thing came out. If you made it this far in the video, huge thank you for watching. It's your views, your likes, your comments that helps us continue to do stuff like this and continue to do sweet builds. Leave a comment, let us know if you like this paint job and if you would rock it on your personal bike. Thanks so much and catch us on the next one.